In a world full of noise, deception, and distraction, many are falling behind. Not because they lack strength, not because they lack faith, but because they have not yet learned to see the battlefield clearly. We are called to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. Not timid, not gullible, but wise. Today, I want to speak to you not about greed, not about tyranny, but about dominion through wisdom, influence through character, and power through righteous clarity. If you want to walk into any room and command not just attention, but true authority, listen closely. Here are 5 divine, ancient principles, yes, Machiavellian by the world's terms, but deeply rooted in timeless truth that will help you outsmart anyone and rise above the chaos of manipulation and lies. Let's begin. Rule number 1. Master the power of silence. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is power restrained. It is self-mastery under pressure. It is discipline in a world that demands constant noise. And let me tell you, we live in a noisy world. The moment you open your eyes, the world shouts at you. From the notifications on your phone to the opinions on television. From the endless commentary online to the idle chatter in every hallway and gathering place. There is no shortage of words. But among all this noise, how rare and valuable is the soul who knows when to speak and when to stay silent. There is wisdom in holding your tongue. There is strength in not having to say everything you know, not having to prove every point, not having to correct every misunderstanding. Because real power does not need to announce itself. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. It simply is. And when you walk in that kind of presence, rooted, stable, secure, you begin to realize something. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. There is a passage that speaks of the wisdom of being quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Do you know why that is? Because when you are slow to speak, you give yourself the opportunity to see clearly. You listen not just to respond, but to understand. And when you understand, you have the advantage. Most people talk to be seen. The wise stay silent to see more. When you speak too quickly, you reveal too much. You show your hand before it's time. You give your emotions a microphone and your enemies a map to your mind. But when you remain silent, you become unreadable, unpredictable, and in many ways untouchable. Those who rush to speak give away their power. Those who wait to speak receive it. Think of a lion. It doesn't roar before it hunts. It moves silently, slowly, with full awareness of its environment. It doesn't waste energy on noise. The roar comes after the kill, not before. Many today are roaring all the time and catching nothing. But those who keep their mouth closed, who observe, who wait for the right moment are the ones who strike with precision. Some of you are in situations right now where you're being provoked. People are trying to get a reaction out of you. They want to see you unravel. They want you to stumble over your own words. But hear me, do not fall for the bait. You don't have to respond to every accusation. You don't have to defend yourself in every conversation. Sometimes the greatest answer is no answer at all. The truth will stand on its own, but only the wise have the patience to let it. And let us not forget this. There are spiritual dimensions to silence. When you're silent, you're not just avoiding noise. You're making room to hear from a higher voice. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs don't happen while you're talking. They happen in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when you turn down the volume of the world and turn your ear toward heaven. When you cultivate silence, you sharpen your perception. You begin to notice the motives behind people's words, the tension behind their laughter, the truth behind their masks. You start seeing things not as they appear, but as they are. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is awareness. There are people who walk into rooms and command attention not because they speak first, but because they say nothing, and everyone still waits to hear what they'll say. That's the kind of presence you cultivate when you master silence, not forced, not fake, but authentic, steady, anchored. A person who doesn't need to speak to prove their worth has already proven it by not needing to. And make no mistake, others can sense that. They can sense the strength behind your restraint. You become a mystery, a force, a presence that unsettles the shallow and empowers the discerning. You become the kind of person who can walk through fire, endure criticism, listen to gossip, hear false rumors, and still hold your peace. Not because you don't feel the heat, but because you know who really holds the power. Rule number 2. Control perception. Control power people are not led by truth. They are led by what they believe is true. And what they believe is not always shaped by fact. It is shaped by perception. That is the battlefield. That is the lever of power in this world. If you can control how people see you, you don't need to control much else, because the one who controls perception controls the outcome. There are many who labor tirelessly to be good, to be right, to be honest, but they are ignored, overlooked, even dismissed. Not because they lack integrity, but because they lack presentation. And there are others, less wise, less moral, who rise to influence and prosperity not because of the truth they carry, but because of the image they project. It is a harsh reality, but one you must not be blind to. This world does not reward what is hidden in the heart. It responds to what is seen. You may have courage, conviction, vision, but if others do not perceive it, they will treat you as if you don't. And you may have uncertainty, weakness, even fear, but if you clothe it in confidence, you can still lead the room. Perception then becomes the doorway through which power walks. It is not about deception. It is about discernment. You are not called to be fake, but you are called to be wise. You are not called to manipulate, but you are called to move with precision. Those who understand perception know when to speak and when to remain a mystery. They understand how a moment of silence can say more than a long speech. They recognize that posture, tone, and timing communicate more than mere vocabulary. The world sees in symbols, not facts. A bowed head may signify humility or weakness. A strong gaze may inspire respect or provoke fear. The wise understand how they are being interpreted, and they respond with intention. Every person you meet carries assumptions about strength, about status, about authority. If you do not shape those assumptions, the world will shape them for you, and most of the time, the world will shape them against you. This is why perception matters. Not because we are slaves to appearance, but because appearance becomes the lens through which others choose to engage with us. Consider a king in rags. If he walks through the marketplace unnoticed, he is treated as a beggar. But put a crown on his head, and the same crowd that once ignored him will now bow. What changed? Not his essence, not his wisdom, only the perception of who he is. And the one who knows how to shape perception wields power without having to seize it. He leads without having to demand it. You do not need to lie to control perception. You need only to reveal selectively. The truth is a sword, powerful, yes, but it must be wielded with care. Not every truth is for every moment. Not every detail is necessary for every person. The wise understand what to reveal, when to reveal it, and what to withhold in order to preserve their influence. Transparency without timing is vulnerable, but revelation with discernment is strategy. There are moments when you must appear strong even when you feel weak, not for pride, not for pretense, but because leadership demands clarity. Those you guide need to see your courage before they see your doubt. There are moments when you must appear unbothered, not because you're numb, but because you're rooted. And there are moments when you must seem less capable, less informed, even less confident, not because you are, but because the situation demands underestimation for your advancement. To control perception is to play a higher game. It is to recognize that power often comes not from the actual move, but from the message it sends. Every word, every silence, every gesture becomes a tool, shaping the atmosphere around you, commanding respect without ever having to request it. What others see in you determines how they treat you. What they perceive in you determines what they entrust to you. If they see authority, they follow. If they see instability, they hesitate. If they see vision, they align. And if they see confusion, they walk away. You must therefore understand that the control of perception is not vanity. It is stewardship of your influence. Rule number 3. Win the mind before you win the fight. Every battle you will ever face begins in one place: the mind. Long before the conflict ever reaches your doorstep, before the conversation turns into confrontation, before the opposition gathers strength, there is a war being waged in your thoughts. That is the first battlefield. That is where dominion is either secured or lost. If you do not conquer the mind, you will lose every other fight, no matter how skilled or strong you appear to be. The mind is not just where ideas live. It is where reality is shaped. What you believe about yourself, about others, about what is possible, those beliefs govern your actions, your choices, and your reactions. A person can be gifted, trained, well-connected, but if their thinking is fractured, their path will be crooked. That is why the truly powerful do not begin with strategies or weapons. They begin with mental clarity. They begin by securing the throne of thought. If you can shape a mind, you can shape a destiny. This is why the greatest leaders in history were not merely warriors. They were thinkers. They were not just men of might. They were men of vision. And that vision began in the realm of the invisible, the thoughts. The one who rules the battlefield of the mind rules every other field beyond it. Consider how most people prepare for battle. They gather weapons, they sharpen their arguments, they rehearse their points. But the wise prepare differently. They do not ask, "What should I say?" They ask, "What must they believe?" They understand that you don't have to win the argument if you've already won the perspective. If the mind is yours, the resistance is already broken. You are not pushing against their will, you are guiding their agreement. And agreement, even among adversaries, is power. When you walk into a room, people immediately begin forming thoughts about you, consciously and subconsciously. What you wear, how you carry yourself, the tone in your voice, all of it is interpreted through the mind. You may never speak a word, but their minds are already working. The truly dominant individual understands this. They don't just prepare what to say, they prepare what to plant. Because every word you speak is a seed, and the mind is soil. If you want to outmaneuver the opposition, don't attack the surface. Go deeper. Get beneath the behavior and reach the belief. Behind every resistance is a rooted thought. Behind every pattern is a mindset. Change the thought and you change the person. Redirect the mindset and the entire atmosphere shifts. Even in your personal life, your greatest conflicts aren't really about the people involved. They're about what you believe about those people, what you believe about yourself in relation to them. Some are stuck in patterns of defeat not because they're being held back by others, but because they have lost the battle in their own thoughts. They believe they're not worthy, not ready, not capable, and so they retreat before they've even stepped into the fight. But if they changed the thought, they would change the outcome. This is why your mind must be guarded and guided. You cannot allow every voice access. You cannot afford to let doubt take root or let fear shape your vision, because once your mind is compromised, your choices will follow, and once your choices are compromised, your destiny is delayed. There is a reason people follow those who speak with conviction. It's not because they agree with every word. It's because conviction wins the mind. A person who speaks from clarity disarms confusion. A person who knows who they are removes the need for others to question them. And that is how influence is secured, not through force, but through mental alignment. Once the mind aligns, the body follows, the will follows, the room follows. You can avoid countless battles if you win the mind early. You can silence critics not by shouting louder, but by planting thoughts that shift the terrain. You can move people without ever touching them, because influence flows from within. The tongue carries no power if the mind behind it is broken. But when the mind is sound, even a whisper carries authority. Those who shape thoughts shape legacies. Those who master the mind master the world that flows from it. Power begins in thought, and the one who walks in dominion knows this well. They are not scattered, distracted, or tossed about by emotion. They are rooted, focused, and intentional. They walk into situations already victorious, not because they fought harder, but because they thought better. Rule number 4. Exploit the weakness that pride hides. Pride is loud. Pride is polished. Pride stands tall in the center of the room, declaring its strength, demanding respect. But behind all that noise, pride is hiding something. A weakness, a soft spot, a wound, a fear. Because the truth is, pride is never built on strength. It is built as a shield to protect insecurity. And the one who seeks dominion in this life must learn how to look past what pride presents and see what pride protects. There is no greater camouflage than arrogance. When a person walks with boastful words, inflated ego, and constant self-promotion, it's not always confidence you're witnessing. It's a cover-up. They don't want you to see their lack, so they put on a show. They don't want you to see their need, so they speak louder than everyone else in the room. But if you have discernment, if your eyes are not fooled by presentation, you can locate the weakness that pride is desperately trying to keep in the dark. This is not about manipulation, it's about strategy. When you're called to lead, to protect, to rise, you must know where pressure can be applied not to destroy others, but to navigate through the illusions they present. Because some doors do not open through confrontation, they open through understanding. And to understand people, you must see where they are weak, even when they pretend to be strong. Some of the most powerful people you will encounter will also be the most prideful. They will act untouchable. They will wear status like armor. They will speak in tones that dare you to question them. But look closer. Pride never appears without a reason. Somewhere in their past, there was a bruise. Somewhere deep inside, there is a fear of being seen as small, a fear of being wrong, a fear of being powerless. And that fear becomes a fortress of pride. But every fortress has a crack, and that crack is where the influence flows. If you can find the place where pride is most invested in its performance, you will usually find the place where it is most vulnerable. It may be a need for approval. It may be an unresolved guilt. It may be the constant need to be right. And once you see it, you have the key not to exploit evil, but to maneuver with wisdom. Even in spiritual matters, pride blinds many. There are those who cannot receive correction because pride blocks their ears. They cannot learn because pride tells them they already know. But the wise do not attack pride head-on. The wise don't try to outshout the proud. They don't fight arrogance with louder arrogance. Instead, they lean in with insight. They sidestep the walls of pride and speak directly to the weakness behind it. And when you speak to that hidden place, you shake the whole structure. Pride fears exposure. That is its greatest vulnerability. It must maintain its image at all costs. And this is where your discernment becomes a weapon. When others push for conflict, pride pushes back harder. But when you move with subtlety, when you acknowledge their strength, speak to their hidden fears, or direct your influence toward what they value most, you bypass the walls entirely. You don't need to bring pride down, you only need to see through it. There are leaders who lose everything because they never learned this rule. They attacked pride without understanding it. They challenged the pride directly and triggered the very insecurity that pride was built to protect. But those who walk in true dominance do not let ego bait them. They remain calm while others perform. They study while others brag. They watch closely while others demand to be seen. And when the moment is right, they speak not to the mask, but to the man behind the mask. Pride often overreaches. It stretches beyond its limits to maintain the illusion, and that overreach becomes the moment of collapse. Because pride rarely sees its own limits. It thinks it's invincible, and that very belief becomes the trap. The wise do not rush to catch it. They wait, because eventually pride reveals its own undoing. When a person is too proud to admit fear, they'll act boldly but without calculation. When they're too proud to admit need, they'll act independently but without support. And when they're too proud to accept corrections, they'll act with certainty but without truth. Each of these moments is an opening, and the one who walks in dominance does not need to push. They need only to be patient, perceptive, and prepared. The key is not to be loud. The key is to be listening for the crack in the speech, the pause in the posture, the overreaction in the tone. Because wherever there is pride, there is a fear behind it. And wherever there is fear, there is a place that can be touched, turned, or transformed by someone who is wise enough to see what's hidden behind the performance. Rule number 5. Always remain the mystery they cannot solve in a world driven by exposure, clarity, and endless disclosure. There is rare and commanding power in mystery, not deception, not dishonesty, but intentional concealment. The greatest strength you can carry is not in what you show, but in what you refuse to reveal. The most dangerous man in the room is not the one who speaks the loudest, but the one no one can quite figure out. Because what people can't predict, they can't control. And what they can't label, they can't limit. There is a kind of influence that doesn't announce itself. It walks in silence and still bends the room. It never boasts, never explains, never defends. It simply is. and those around it are left wondering, calculating, and adjusting their posture because they are unsure of what they're dealing with. That is a mystery. That is presence. That is power without performance. People crave certainty. They want to place you in a category, to size you up, to know exactly what to expect. But the moment you become predictable, you become manageable. And the moment you're manageable, you are no longer feared or followed. You are simply tolerated. Mystery removes the option of being underestimated, keeps people off balance, keeps them watching, waiting, wondering, and in that uncertainty you hold the upper hand. The greatest minds in history were often the quietest. They let others speak. They listened. They observed. And they moved only when it mattered most. Not because they lacked knowledge, but because they understood the value of restraint. Power is not always shown in expression. Sometimes it's in what you withhold. You don't need to say your every plan. You don't need to react to every attack. You don't need to validate your every move. When your presence is grounded and your identity is secure, silence speaks louder than noise. In spiritual terms, even God moves in mystery. Not everything is revealed at once. There are seasons where he speaks and seasons where he is silent, not because he is absent, but because timing matters more than explanation. So too must you learn to walk. Your next move does not need to be known. Your motives do not need to be understood. Your strength does not need to be proven. What's hidden is often more powerful than what's revealed. If everyone knows your pressure points, your patterns, your process, then they can prepare for you. But when you remain the unknown variable, the unpredictable presence, you force others to adapt, to overthink, to misstep. That is not manipulation. That is dominion. Because you're not fighting for control. You've already claimed it through your ability to remain unreadable. There is wisdom in letting others underestimate you. While they talk, you build. While they guess, you prepare. While they assume, you position yourself. You don't have to correct every false narrative. You don't have to chase every whisper. You are not called to explain your every movement. Power grows in silence, and mystery is the cloak that covers power until it is ready to be revealed. The moment you overexpose yourself, you surrender leverage, not because you are less, but because others no longer fear crossing boundaries. They feel they know you. They believe they understand you, and that belief breeds carelessness. But when you are a mystery, when your eyes speak more than your words, when your silence carries weight, when your next move is never predictable, you demand caution. You are approached with respect, not familiarity. You are followed with curiosity, not assumption. Some of the most effective moves you will ever make in life will be made quietly. You'll shift the room with a gesture. You'll change a narrative with one sentence. You'll walk away from noise and let silence create the impact. This is how leaders rise without struggle. They don't climb loudly. They ascend while others are distracted by their own noise. Mystery keeps you from being boxed in. It protects your spirit from cheap access, keeps your vision safe from sabotage, and it keeps those around you alert, constantly wondering what's next, never certain how close they really are to understanding you. Because once you become fully understood, you become fully exposed, and full exposure is vulnerability. Those who walk in mystery don't lack confidence. They operate from a deeper kind of authority. They have nothing to prove because their fruit will speak. They move in seasons, not in trends. They don't flash, but they shine, and that shine lasts longer than the applause that comes from performance. When you carry mystery, you carry something eternal. Not just attention, but aura. Not just recognition, but reverence. You are not simply seen. You are felt in a world teeming with noise, distraction, and surface-level influence. You have been called to something higher, something deeper. These 5 rules are not about manipulation. They are about spiritual mastery. They are not tools of destruction, but of discernment. To outsmart anyone is not to outshout them, outfight them, or outshine them, but to walk in such unshakable awareness, such intentional silence, and such divine authority that others cannot help but take notice. When you reveal nothing but see everything, when you win the mind before engaging the battle, when you listen more than you speak, and when you discern the pride that masks weakness, you operate on a level above the chaos. You become the one who sets the tone, not the one who reacts to it. You are not tossed about by the actions of others because you have learned to stand in stillness. Stillness is not passivity. Stillness is precision. It is clear. It is the mark of one who walks with purpose and power. Let others scramble for attention. Your influence is not rooted in visibility, but in vision. Let others speak their plans. You speak only when it shifts the room. Let others defend their pride. You discern their weakness with grace and choose when to strike and when to stay silent. And let others try to solve you while you remain the mystery that guides the room without ever needing to control it. This is the pathway to dominion. Not the dominion of ego, but the dominion of divine wisdom. Not the dominance of force, but the authority of presence. You do not need to take control because when you master these principles, control begins to follow you. May you walk in quiet power. May you lead with insight, not impulse. May your mystery unsettle the proud and comfort the wise. And may your spirit remain untouchable, hidden under the armor of wisdom, the shield of discernment, and the crown of self-mastery.